Hi there, welcome back to another instalment of In Conversation With. So my name is Kieran James from Stride, and with us today we've got Nigel Apperley from TRUSTist. Hi, Nigel.
Hi, Kieran.
So obviously your business have been doing really well during the COVID-19 crisis, or you may have been hit quite hard by it. This week we're going to listen to someone who has been through it all. They've had highs of owning a business that's valued at over 28 million, and they've had lows where that's all gone and they've had to start all over again. So I think in terms of people well placed to help us understand the complexities of going up and down and moving that, motivating ourselves to get through the business journey and the business life cycle, Nigel is a man that knows that. So we're going to delve into Nigel's story and what's led him to run the current successful TRUSTist review platform, which is his business at the moment. We're going to talk about all through his history from start to where he is today and really just delve into his character. So Nigel, great to have you with us. I want to start right at the beginning, if that's okay with you. So you've been involved in the internet for quite some time. So when did that start?
So that was 1999, and I had a whole career for 10 or 12 years before that in pensions, which was pretty dull and boring. But I remember being at Cranfield University doing an MBA, Masters of Business Administration, and we had a lecture in June 1999 about Dell Computer Corporation and Michael Dell and how he'd successfully built his business. And they showed us a graph of how his share price had pretty much wobbled about at the same price for years and years. And then all of a sudden he said, I'm going to sell on the internet. And it spiked massively. And that got me thinking, and I thought there's got to be something to this internet malarkey. So I started off with the idea of a jewelry business because jewelry is small, valuable, and can be posted easily. Couldn't get an account with anyone. And then I stumbled across this company called Photoline Distribution, which was part of Jessop's. And Photoline Distribution gave me an account, bizarrely. And I basically copied their catalogue, which was several thousand pages, into HTML. So I taught myself to code in HTML, and later I taught myself to code in ASP. Or active server pages, and yeah, we got a website up, and within the first 6 months we turned over £100,000 just by people sending us checks and money to our bank account. And I remember we used to say to people that phoned us up, yeah, I just checked with the warehouse, and the warehouse was Photoline Distribution. And I used to phone them up and say, have you got a Canon whatever or a Nikon whatever camera? And they'd say yes or no, and then I'd go back to the customer, and then the money would appear in our account a few hours after that, and off we went. So that's how it all started, Kieran.
So did you bought from this other organization, sold to your customers, or did you drop ship that?
No, so we had it delivered to us because we were getting by sort of December 1999, we were getting about 50 orders a day. So we would order on the Thursday afternoon before the cutoff time of 3 p.m. or whenever it was. I can't really remember now because it's 20 years ago, 21 years ago. And we would order by the cutoff time, and then the goods would arrive the next day with us. And then we would post out. So we never went down the drop shipping route. And I've actually, interestingly, I've always found drop shipping to be an incredibly expensive way of doing things, especially when you're working on tight margins, which in my current business, we're not working on tight margins, but certainly back then we were working on sort of 3% margins at the very beginning. We got it up to about 16.5% by the end of the journey by doing bundling and stuff like that, but at the beginning it was about 3%. So
even
yeah.
when the internet was in there, it's kind of its heyday, that were before the millennium kind of hit, you're still only working on very tiny margins on the internet. What kind of volume were you having to work at to get that to, you know, to be able to drive that forward and have room for growth and things?
Yeah, good question. So I remember asking HSBC, who were our bankers at the time, whether they thought it was a good idea for my then wife and me to take a salary from the business about a year in, because we hadn't taken anything at that point. And you know, we had cash in the bank because we were transacting and we were making small margins. But it really focuses your mind when you have to pay a mortgage and you have to pay for a child and things like that, around how you merchandise things on the website. So we managed to get the net margins up from 3 to 6% initially by getting direct accounts with the likes of Fujifilm. First of all, they were brilliant to us. They really looked after us. Nikon, Olympus, all the other camera brands, and so we were making a margin of 6%, and we had to pay 1.4% for credit card charges and about 2% for carriage. So that didn't leave an awful lot. But then we, I think, were the first people to do this thing called a mega deal. So we did a mega deal 1, 2, 3, and 4. So with every camera, we bundled batteries, tripod, and we did a deal with Photobox, which I'll come back to. So prints there, and Photobox later went on to buy Moonpig.
Wow.
And Moonpig, Nick Jenkins, who set up Moonpig, also went to Cranfield about the same time as me, which was just a coincidence. Yeah, so we managed to get it up by bundling the accessories with the cameras to 15.6%, which in consumer electronics is unheard of. Those are great margins.
Do you know what, it really reminds me of a book I've read called Blind Customers by Bradley Sugars, who I think he was the CEO of Action Coach franchise, and he talks about that, the model of having multiple, you know, your single main sort of point that people buy from, but then having multiple other things that come into that and that's where a lot of the margin is made in those other areas. I think as we move forward in COVID-19, I think a lot of businesses might already have stuff like that in place, but if people don't, that's definitely a good little insight into, you know, the differences it can make, because going from a 3% to, sorry, what was that final one you said there? 15%. I mean, that's 5 times the amount in your pocket, isn't it? So that's a significant improvement by adding those in. That's fantastic. Okay,
yeah, you can live off that. Yeah,
absolutely, and that's the bit I like about business. It's by analysing and working out how you can grow and make those differences by changing the model in the way the business works. So tell me what happened with that business then. So that seemed to do quite well then. Talk about the journey of that business.
Yeah, so we were turning over by the end of the first 6 months, we turned over 100,000, which was unbelievable. And then between Christmas and New Year, I got a piece of software called Actinic, and that gave us the ability to take online payments, which just sounds nuts now, because obviously as soon as you set up an e-commerce business, you have to take payments, don't you? But we couldn't for the first 6 months, and then I translated basically the HTML and ASP website that we had into Actinic over Christmas and New Year. It took me, I remember doing it on Christmas Day, Boxing Day, the day after, etc., and New Year's Day, and pressing the upload button at about midday on New Year's Day 2000, after all that nonsense about the year 2000 and all the planes falling out of the sky, which never happened. And then our turnover just rocketed from there. It was a very search engine optimized website, SEO optimized SEO website. Did phenomenally well. And then over the ensuing few years, we grew that to a turnover of 20 million a year, and you know, 15.6% margin. Even with the overheads, we were taking quite a lot out of the business, and it was great. I had a valuation of the business in 2003. Which valued it at 28 million, and I thought, I'm not selling it for that little. And then I hired a whole board of people, and so I had a marketing director who came from the right background. I had a merchandising director that did the same, and so on. So I had a finance director. All of those important people were in place, and I was paying them collectively hundreds of thousands a year to do their jobs. And I stepped back a bit and appointed a managing director, which was probably the biggest mistake I've made in business.
How did it feel though when you were able to do that? Because obviously for a lot of people, that's like the exit strategy. They're not looking to necessarily sell their business. They're looking to just grow it to a point where they can step aside and still be part of it, but just more on the creative side. And was it a positive move to do that in terms of, you know, as it just happened? Obviously in hindsight it's different, but
yeah, at the time it felt like it was a brilliant move. And I'd because of my connections with Cranfield, I had a chairman who sadly passed away now, called John Constable, who was a board member at Sage, and Graham Wiley, who set up Sage, invested about £1 million into the business. He was also director of the National Merchant Bank of Zimbabwe, for example, and various other highly prestigious organisations. So I thought I had some. Well, I did have some good advice from him, and we came up with an interview process, and we had hundreds of applicants. We put an advert in the Sunday Times, which cost quite a few £1,000s. I can't remember what it did cost now, but it was a lot. 10,000 rings a bell. And we had hundreds and hundreds of applicants. So we sorted those applicants down to, I think it was 20. And then John and I went through each of those, and we had a scoring system, and we scored them, and then we interviewed 3 of them. And wow. the person that came out top, only by 1 mark, I hasten to add, only by 1 mark got the job. And I had my reservations from week 2.
Oh, that's quick, isn't it?
Yeah, he wanted to spend a lot of his time in the office doing spreadsheets rather than walking the floor and motivating the staff, which is what I used to do before I sort of let go of the reins. And I thought, okay, well, he's got his own style, so let him get on with it. But yeah, hindsight's a wonderful thing, isn't it?
I think if you don't mind me asking, you know, obviously you've been in that position. I know that there's some of our customers now who are looking at their teams, and they're going, they've got one of 2 ways. There's one group of customers that are going, I need to grow my team. Who's next? Who's the next hire? And on the other side, I've got people that are going, I know there's people that are going, okay, we're going to have to make some really difficult choices going forward. How do we, how do we choose the right people in the right roles? And maybe there's some shuffling around or whatever, because obviously COVID-19 has highlighted in some businesses the capacity, capability, and obviously there's some people just don't have the volume of business. So what advice would you give from an experiential perspective on just, you know, hiring new people, picking the right people for the, you know, to support, particularly in that management level, or that kind of, you know, to help a business owner step away from doing it all themselves? What kind of advice do you have in that area?
I probably can't give too much advice in hiring people because I have made some monumental mistakes in my career hiring people. But we got to the point with the camera business where we overstretched ourselves. I mean, we'd had the most phenomenal month ever in December 2003. We turned over £2.7 million in a month. That, you know, that annualized, that's 36 million, isn't it? So it's amazing turnover, and at decent margins as well. But because I'd spent so much money on the management team and putting that in place, because I'd had that valuation of 28 million, thinking, right, I need to put the right structures in place, and doing all of that, we ran out of money. Basically, our cash flow was appalling, and so I went to all of our suppliers and I said, can we put a 1 year repayment plan in place for November and December's purchases? And all of them, apart from Olympus, said yes. So if anyone listening to this has ever been through insolvency, they'll know that you have to treat every creditor equally. And I had to treat every creditor equally. And because Olympus were the stick in the mud, I couldn't accept the repayment plans from that everyone else had offered me. And so I was forced into a position of going into administration. And that lasted for about 12 days. The most awful time of my life ever. And I'm sure there'll be people listening that are going through COVID-19 issues at the moment that are going to be faced with these issues. But so I had to borrow, or not borrow, but I had to have invested 600,000 from a private equity company. Fortunately, I was in the position where I had a spare house, and so I was able to remortgage that for 100,000. So I put 100,000 of my own money in. So for 700,000, I bought the business back out of administration. But just getting back to your question, Kieran, I had to go from 75 staff to 23 staff.
Wow.
Fairly quickly. I mean, pretty much overnight. And it's easy, actually. It's who are the decent people that you want to hang on to. It was as simple as that. And it sounds.
Do you think there would be a scenario where you go, actually, there's people I want to keep, but commercially can't keep?
No, there weren't actually. The people that I kept were the people that I wanted to keep. We dipped down to 12 million turnover shortly after the administration, but we soon bounced back up to 20 million. Then the venture capitalists were such a pain in the neck. I picked up the phone to a guy called Christophe Cornijou, a French guy that I'd met at a trade fair in Cologne, and said, you know, you've got this business, Pneumatica, it's turning over 80 million. Do you want to make that 100 million if we join forces and you can have access to the UK market? And he said, yeah, well, I've heard you've had some problems. Yes, let's go for it. Then I phoned up the venture capitalists and said, look, I've got this guy in Toulouse that's really interested in buying your stake out. And they said, in no uncertain terms, are you to travel to Toulouse to have that negotiation? We do not believe it's a serious thing. Do not do it. I said, okay. So I put the phone down and then booked my flight to Toulouse. And then got there. We went out for lunch. We did the deal over lunch. I remember I had a spaghetti bolognese, I think, and by a lake. It was lovely. And we agreed that they would buy out the venture capitalists share for 900,000. So they put 600 in, they got 900 out 3 months later. And then
that's a great return.
I got 2.75 million pounds worth of, or me and my wife did, of shares, and I made a few pounds out of the arbitrage between the deal as well. So I made 50,000 from the venture capitalists and 50,000 from Pneumatica as well. So that was quite nice. So yeah, that was an interesting time. And then they wanted me to join the board. So I moved to Toulouse, and I joined the board, and yeah, so that was that.
So I understand it. We've had this conversation before around there's quite a funny story around when you get to a certain size, how there's stuff that gets done that perhaps isn't productive. And if anyone knows about lean business or lean manufacturing, all that kind of stuff, they'll know that this is classed as waste. And you've got quite an interesting story around that and the newspapers, haven't you?
Yeah. So when I invested in a marketing director, she had a team of people, and I noticed some shelving go up by this team of people, and this shelving was gradually getting filled up with folders full of stuff. And I went over one day to one of the girls that was working on the team, and I don't say girls in the derogatory sense, you know what I mean. So she was working there, and I said, so I see every morning that you're getting 20 newspapers delivered and you're doing something with them. What's happening with them? So she said, well, I'm cutting out the adverts that we've placed and all of our competitors. And at the time, our competitors were the likes of Comet, Dixon's, Jessop's, etc. And we were taking front page adverts on the Daily Telegraph, the Times, etc. And she was cutting them out, and she was putting them into these folders. And I said, so what happens when these cuttings get put in the folders? And she said, I don't know. So then I went to the marketing director and I said, so you've got whoever it was collecting these cuttings every day, and they're sitting there on the shelf. What are you doing with them? And she said, yes, we will need to do an analysis of that at some point. And I just flipped my lid. I absolutely lost it. I said, you've got someone sitting there every morning for 3 hours cutting stuff out, sticking it on a shelf and doing absolutely F all with it. You have to be joking. So yeah, that was completely wasted.
I think not in necessarily like quite as an obvious way as that, but I do think that during COVID, with teams shrinking and people being furloughed and all that kind of stuff, some people are going to be looking at it and going, actually, we had a bit of waste. Or people weren't quite as efficient as they could have been within our team. So I think that'll probably resonate with some people. Definitely, yeah. So continue the story then. So what happened? Obviously, that's a high. That's your amazing time. Sounds like it. Time of your life type stuff. But then what happened after that? Talk us through it.
Yeah. So I was working away in Toulouse, and I worked there for a year. It was an incredibly wasteful company, as my own company was, as I found out from the paper clippings. But we had a department called Service Après-Vente, which is after-sales service. And it's a big thing in European countries. It's not so much here. We tend to throw away consumer electronics when they go bust. But they don't in most of Europe. They want the manufacturer to repair them, so or the retailer to repair them. So we have this really wasteful system of the customer sending their broken camera or accessory to Pneumatica in Toulouse. Then we would send it from Toulouse to Paris. It would get mended in Paris, and then it would get sent back to Toulouse and then back out to the customer. And I thought, this is a bit silly. Why don't we, there's a few process things as well in the meantime. So some things like the customer could print off a return slip from the internet rather than us having to post it out to them, and all the very wasteful. So I got the people from Paris to come down and have a meeting, and they said for €5 more they can send it direct to us. So we went from 17 people down to 1 in service for pre-want. And that one person was brilliant, but we didn't need all those other people. I also reorganized the warehouse as well. So we had a conveyor belt in the middle, and all the items that were used very often, like batteries and bags, they would be under the conveyor belt, so it'd be easy to pick and pack. And then one day, me and a few guys went to IKEA and bought a load of desks from there, and we just changed it all around. And we went from 500 units a day to 5,000 units a day, and we obliterated the 2-week backlog that there was in the business. So wow. Yeah, that's
basically just going through a process of like basically just looking at your processes and going through that. I think there's definitely going to be some people have had time to do that recently. I'm sure there's going to be some more time going forward as well. But did you use any sort of methodology, or was it just sort of your gut feeling of what was right and wrong, or how did you come about making those changes?
Yeah, so I'd learned quite a lot from business process redesign at Cranfield when I was doing my MBA there. So what I did was I got a stopwatch, and I measured how long times were taking to do things, and I basically mapped out the floor design of the warehouse as it was on paper, and then cut it all out. So I had all the tables and all the shelving and everything mapped out and cut out into little paper things. And then I thought, what is going to be the most efficient way of doing this? And then I had some squared paper, and I just mapped out what I thought would be the most efficient way. And again, then I tested it with the stopwatch again, and we went backwards and forwards several times to make sure that we got it to be the most efficient process possible. And then we implemented it. So we did have to spend some money. We had to spend about 5,000 on a conveyor belt, and we had to spend, I think it was about 2,000 or 3,000 on additional desks. But they were doing some silly things before, like picking the order 3 times before they packed it, and then wrapping it massively with bubble wrap, which is completely unnecessary because every camera comes with foam inside the packaging and everything else. So managed to cut down massively the waste that was in the system. But I was a shareholder, so that was to my benefit, obviously, which was great. But I think we're running out of time, aren't we?
Yeah, we've still got time. Don't worry, we're doing all right. So yeah, do you know what that is? It's really interesting hearing some of those stories, because it's, no matter how big you are, there's always room for change, and no matter how much we grow, there's always, as we grow, it is what makes the need for change, because there's new processes, new systems, and things that weren't really an issue when you had 5 staff. When you have 10, become quite an issue. Same between moving from 1 to 2. So tell me a little bit more about there wasn't all plain sailing with that business, though, was it? So what happened to that business?
Yes, so we were buying a company called Scandinavian Photo, and it just landed on my desk by chance. So someone bought a fax. Do you remember faxes?
Just about.
Someone bought a fax into my office and said, this company is being sold by, I think it was KPMG. So I made contact with KPMG, or whoever it was, one of the big accountancy firms, and said, yeah, actually, I know we're 1 day behind the deadline, but it's because my idiot friends have left the fax at the bottom of the pile for the last month. We'd actually be quite interested in buying them. So I got to know this lawyer and some bankers at SEB quite well, and I managed to structure. I was going up to Gothenburg probably once a week for 8 or 9 weeks, and seeing both SEB and Scandinavian Photo, and getting to know them and coaxing them along and saying, yeah, we'd love to buy you. And I did this amazing deal. It sounds boastful, I know, but it was a brilliant deal. So we did a deal off their balance sheet, which said we could take debt from our bank, which was, I can't remember who our bank was now. We could take that, but we didn't really need to, because we'd actually pay them from our cash reserves, and then over 3 years we'd pay them what they wanted. So brilliant deal.
So you got access to additional funding as well in the process?
Yeah, so the company was listed on the Marché Libre, which is the same as AIM here. And it also had venture capital backing, and the venture capitalists would have given us the money to do what we needed to. But it was a debt-only deal, so it was brilliant. So we didn't have to, so we were going to buy that company out of their future profits, and it would have given us access to the Scandinavian market, which was brilliant.
Amazing deal. Yeah, no, that's fantastic. If you can get out of future profits, it's just, yeah.
Couldn't have done a better deal, really. And the lawyer was amazing. He structured the deal for us, and I don't put it down to me. It was down to the lawyer that we had, and SEB. To be fair, they were brilliant. And then on one of the trips up to Gothenburg, the venture capitalist said to me, we want you to be CEO. And I said, okay, fair enough, because I'm fed up of the current CEO and COO just wasting money. They had this stupid idea that it was all right to have a cost per acquisition, CPA, of over 100% of the purchase price.
Sorry?
I told you the margins we were working with within consumer electronics right at the beginning of this, which is
very small,
sort of 3%. Okay, when you get a bit bigger, it goes to 6% and sometimes 10%. So those were the margins we were working to, but they were prepared to spend 100% CPA on getting a new piece of.
So they're expecting a customer to buy almost somewhere between sort of 7 and 30 times from that purchase.
Not the customer, but the advertising spend.
The advertising spend. Okay.
Yeah. So that was going on all the time, and it was in the days when .coms could do that, because they had venture capital funding, etc. But it was drying up by then, and they should have seen this. So I on the way up to Gothenburg, I stopped off in Paris on a Sunday night, and I did my pitch to the venture capitalists on a very wet and windy Monday morning in Paris, and they said, right, we want you to be CEO. We're going to ditch Christoph and his wife and the rest of the team, and you're going to take over. So go up to Gothenburg, do your thing up there, come back on Thursday, and we'll talk further. I got back to the offices in Toulouse on Thursday, and the CEO said, can I have a quick chat with you? I said, yeah, sure. So I walked into his office, and he said, I hear you've been to Paris to steal my job. You've got 20 minutes to resign from both the British company and the French company, and you're out of here. So that was sort of the end of that, really.
Oh, wow, just like that. So you didn't get any more chance than that?
No. And then the other guy in the room, a guy called Robert Bousquet, actually turned out to be quite a good friend. So he said to me, you need to speak to this company, and I can't remember what they were called. but their address was 1 Champs-Élysées, Paris. So pretty prestigious. And I'd been to the Prix de l'Arc de Triomphe in Paris, and for the weekend. So I thought, yeah, I'll pop in. And I went in and I had a very fancy lunch at 2 Champs-Élysées. And it was, I remember it was a croque madame, which is a ham and cheese toastie with an egg on top. And but it was the most fancy meal you've ever seen, with waiters flying around all over the place. And we basically said, look, I want to buy. He said, I want to buy your shares for €3. And bearing in mind that at the 2.75 million euros, and I've been selling them drip by drip, we were now down at. They were at €16 when I got them, so we were down at €3 now. So this was pretty bad. And I said, well, if you do 3.05, I'll go for it. So 600,000 quid landed in my account that afternoon. Thank goodness. That Friday, that was the Monday. That Friday, Nomatica went bust. So
wow. So not lucky, but also silver linings there. There could have been a lot worse, couldn't it?
Yeah.
So that's amazing. I think how did that feel, and what was your kind of, did you go through a period where that was tough, or did you bounce back straight away? I mean, what was that? What went through your head around that time?
Well, the stuff around the administration and that was awful, because we had to go from 75 staff to 23 overnight. Yeah. And many people listening to this will be having to go have those conversations with their teams at the moment, and it's dreadful. It's absolutely dreadful. You can't, you are putting dinners on tables for 75 families basically, and then all of a sudden 52 of them you're not, and it is the worst feeling in the world. Unless you've been through it, you cannot describe it. It's just terrible.
So how did you come out of this? Let's just accelerate a little bit. So moving forward from that business, then how did you go? What's the bit between that and your current business then? What's happened during that time?
Okay, how long have we got?
I think we've got about another 10 minutes.
Okay, so I obviously got that windfall from the speculator at 1 Champs-Élysées, which was helpful. And then at the same time, I was going through a split up with my wife, and so I decided to go to the Isle of Man for a year, and that was basically to avoid tax. So I'll fess up there. So I avoided the tax there, and I didn't work for a year. And that was the most boring year of my life. I wouldn't recommend it to anyone unless you're ready to retire, because I tell you, you can play golf, you can go cycling, you can go walking. It's just boring. So
what is the thing that stops it being boring then for you?
There isn't really. So I mean, I think I've got another 5 years, possibly 7 years with this business. So the bit we've missed out, because we're constrained by time here, is that the sale to Nomatica was my first exit. I then set up Map and Compass, which I sold. I then set up Internet Buyer, which I sold.
Okay, so several rounds of selling and buying and selling.
Well, setting up and selling, yeah. So I've done that several times, and this is the last time. I'm 52 now, so I just don't have the energy to do another startup.
Okay, so tell me what led to this one. So like, before this, where were you, and what kind of led into this one? And do you know what, Nigel? I think we're gonna have to get you back at some time, because I'm absolutely fascinated by your story, and I think others will be as well. I think we could easily go on for hours here. But yeah, in the interest of people having other things to do. So what maybe if talk about where you were just before TRUSTist, and what led you into starting TRUSTist.
Yeah, so in 2008, when the financial crisis hit, which is very similar to where we are today, I think, with COVID-19, I had a business which was turning over 100,000 a year, and that was all profit because it was a software business. And I was doing about 4 hours of work a week. So it was. It's not bad. It's not bad. And I was very happy and had a great lifestyle, and I was playing golf 5 times a week, and I got my handicap down to 15, I think. I'm still absolutely shoddy at golf, but anyway. But yeah, so even with that few years of doing that, that was fun. And then 2008 hit, and I lost a few properties that I held. I went down to about £2,000 a year turnover from that business, and it was an absolute disaster. So then I had to go back into the employed world. So the first job I did was with Waterford, Wedgwood, Royal Dalton. I did a director of e-commerce role there. Sorry, no, the first one was Canon Europe. So it was sort of hanging on to my photographic roots, and then WWRD, and then following that was Slendertone, which was a great deal of fun because I got to travel the world as well with that one, and then finally QuickFit, and QuickFit, I took their online sales from 20 million to 80 million in the 18 months I was there, just by doing the obvious stuff, really. And then part of the sort of process of reviewing everything that was there at QuickFit, I wanted to see whether there was a correlation between reviews and revenue. So we trialed Trustpilot, Bizarre Voice, Reputation.com, and there's another one as well, I can't remember. So we trialed all of them, and we couldn't see a correlation between revenues and collecting and using reviews. So then we asked 40 of the store managers to start collecting Google reviews. And when we did, over the 3-month period that we did that, we saw a 50% increase in revenue. So if there's any takeaway for people that are listening to this today, A, get your Google My Business listing sorted out, and B, start collecting Google reviews. So I took those learnings and set up TRUSTist 6 years ago almost now. And yeah, I hate to say it because there will be people listening to this that have suffered through the COVID crisis, but our rate of acquisition of new customers pre-COVID was 50 in 4 months, and since COVID it's been nearly 200. So we've quadrupled our acquisition.
Why do you think that is then? What do you think about this time specifically is driving that positivity towards your business?
Well, I think it's just we're getting better known because we've been around for so long now, but also people are seeing us as a way of getting themselves out of this mire, which is COVID-19.
I assume that's because obviously, when you're trying to get a cost-effective way of getting to your customers, being able to get reviews that then in turn help improve your website's SEO, or just make people, it appears that you're, obviously reviews drive our perception of businesses. So by going to that, people are basically helping themselves stand out from the crowd effectively.
Yeah, exactly. So we've got one well-known swimming franchise who I'm sure, I think you've got them as a client as well. We deal with 15 of them, and we did a comparison versus the 15 that deal with us and 15 that don't deal with us, and their web traffic was 4 times greater. And we're talking 300 clicks per month to 1,200
So right
clicks.
now, when people are looking at it and going, okay, how can I regrow my business? How can I build my business back up? What's the, both a quick way, but in a cost-effective way of building their business back up? If somebody could get 4 times more people looking at their website, I can see that being really, really valuable, particularly those that are perhaps product-based businesses where, something landing on their website could mean direct purchases there and then without them having to do anything. In terms of driving that sales and paying for advertising elsewhere. That's really interesting. What we're going to have to do, Nigel, because I'm conscious of time, so we're going to have to start bringing it to an end. But do you know what? Your story's been absolutely fascinating. Just hearing about the history, and I'm sure that each of those businesses that you've set up and sold has its own fascinating story and some learnings in it. So I'd love to bring you back at some point in the future as well, and maybe perhaps go for a different part of your career and life. And I suppose my kind of last question before we close off really is just, obviously you've bounced back a lot. For anyone right now that is going through this process, have you got anything that you might say to somebody to help, help them in if they're in that situation and they're looking at, perhaps being a bit lost in the current situation?
That's a really tough one, Kieran. I think it can get really tough in business, and especially if you put your head above the parapet and you actually have a go and you do have your own business. But if you've got a sustainable business, I mean, I don't want to be boastful here because that would make me into an idiot, but we only lost 13 clients out of 2,000 through the COVID-19 disaster that has been and is going to be. And I think that's because we've got a sustainable business model. So if you've got a sustainable business model, you'll be okay.
Yeah.
So that's the question you have to ask yourself. Do you have a sustainable business model? And I'm sorry if that sounds arrogant, but
no, it doesn't at all. No, it makes complete sense. I think there's a lot of models at the moment where people are, their model might be suitable, but they need to adjust their model. They might be teaching children and need to, face to face, or doing some form of training face to face and need to add in an extra element of, so they can run on, remotely if they need to as well. Or there's people that have been selling at events and they need to now sell online. So that I definitely think, I was speaking to somebody the other day and they reckon it's the death of the office. I don't think it's quite that far. They think COVID-19 is the death of the office, and they're saying we're into like a new era of working practice. I do think though that there's going to be a lot more people working from home, a lot more businesses that are going to have to deal online.
definitely, I think we trust our staff a lot more than we used to.
Absolutely.
And that's a good thing, because we knew they were trustworthy in the first place. So yeah, I think there's some good to come out of this, but obviously those businesses that aren't able to trade at the moment is absolutely terrible.
Yeah, and hopefully there's light at the end of the tunnel coming up. Fingers crossed for those businesses as well, and that they can, positively move themselves forward. I think there's a lot of learnings in what you said there. Fab. Well, thank you so much for your time, Nigel. Really, really appreciate it. As I said, we're going to try and have you back at some point because there's clearly a lot there. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to flick the slide here. So for those that are listening, you can go direct to TRUSTist's website at trustist.com, and that's a way to help you. If you want to use your reviews to generate more sales, I'm sure Nigel would appreciate even more business. So please do get in touch if you want to grow your sales through reviews. Also, I've asked Nigel to put this on here. It's a really good report. And I know I keep banging on about this with all of our customers, which is why you shouldn't stop marketing in a crisis. All about sort of, I suppose it says it is as it is. Why you shouldn't stop marketing in a crisis. So there's a link there for that as well. So maybe pause the video, take that link down and have a read of that blog as well. Other than that, please, if you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe to our channel if you want to hear more about this, and we'll bring more guest speakers on. Next week, we've got Matt Sedgwick from 12 Recruitment, who hopefully will delve into more of the question I asked you, Nigel, around how to attract good talent. And thank you very much, everyone, for listening. Have a great day.